In the land of Tamriel, we are able to meet a variety of interesting characters. From Ulfric Stormcloak to Gelibor, Martin Septim to the Grey Fox, and Vivek to Fargoth. And while each of these characters are endlessly fascinating and unique, I feel that none of them will ever be as humorous and eccentric as a certain Telvanni master. The Myr, the myth, the legend, the wizard I have based my entire online persona and YouTube channel off of. Master Neloth. I have been making videos as Master Neloth for 3 years now, and I think it is an outright war crime that I have not made a video going over every aspect of this beautiful and sexy elf. But that ends today. Hello my fellow Hirelings of House Telvanni! This is Neloth, a 1,000-year-old Dunmerry master wizard that is a part of House Telvanni, one of the 5 great houses that rule Morrowind. House Telvanni is a faction of primarily dark elf wizards that rule the northwest part of Morrowind, whose sole focus is to acquire power and kill their competition, even if their competition is their fellow Telvanni. And Master Neloth is no exception to this rule, as he is completely devoid of any empathy and is perfectly willing to do what it takes to advance his research and drink Canis root tea in peace.
Have you found Verona yet? I could really use some tea.
Now, when people think of Master Neloth, they typically think of his appearance in Skyrim's Dragonborn DLC, where he makes his home in his mushroom tower called Tel Mithryn. But in reality, his first appearance was all the way back in 2002 in the Elder Scrolls III Morrowind, making the very idea of Neloth older than this Breton twink that keeps following him around. So I think the best place to start talking about Neloth is from the beginning, so make sure to watch out for cliff racers because we are going to Vvardenfell. Now, Vvardenfell has 4 main cities, each controlled by one of the great houses or the god King Vivek himself, and Sadrith Mora is the city owned by the Telvanni. In the middle of the city is the Tower of Tel Naga, and this is where we will find the amazing Master Neloth himself. However, he is quite different here in Morrowind than he is in Skyrim. Not only does he look different as he hasn't grown his glorious goatee yet, but he is completely uninterested in speaking with or having anything remotely to do with you. Which is different because in Skyrim he's quite a chatterbox. In fact, most of Neloth's dialogue in Morrowind is him either saying, "I don't care" or "shut up," with my favorite line being, "That is completely stupid. Remarkably stupid. You should shut up more often." Which he says if you talk to him about giving an Ashlander a Telvanni bride. Now, curiously enough, if you, the player, discover that you are the prophesized Nerevarine and are trying to be named Hortator by all the leaders of House Telvanni, Master Neloth is actually the easiest to convince to name you Hortator, as if your disposition with him is 70 or above, he will name you it so you can just leave him alone.
Oh, were you fishing for a compliment, a sign of gratitude? Don't waste your time. Those things are for the weak and foolish.
But before talking about Neloth himself, I want to talk about his tower, Tel Naga, because unlike the other wizard lords who grew their towers, Neloth instead moved into his, as during the events of ESO, Tel Naga was owned by the Archmagister Neloth Autheri. This is most interesting because we do not see Neloth Autheri during the events of Morrowind, and his title of Archmagister, Leader of House Telvanni, has been given to Gothren. Now, I don't think a single Telvanni wizard would ever just hand over their land and title to someone else and just retire, leading me to believe that Neloth Autheri died after the events of ESO. But then why does Neloth rule over the tower instead of Gothren, who instead lives in Tel Arun, which is west of Sadrith Mora? Well, this leads into one of my many theories surrounding Master Neloth, as I believe he and Gothren plotted to murder the Archmagister. so that Gothren could become the new Archmagister and Neloth could not only be promoted to the rank of Master, but also live in the old Archmagister's tower, saving him from spending time having to grow his own tower, time which could be better spent on his experiments. Remember, during the events of ESO, we never see Neloth, and in the book We Reject the Pact, which is written by the Archmagister Neloth, we can see that it is co-signed by all of the council members of House Telvanni like Mistress Dratha and Gothren, but does not include Neloth, leading me to believe that Neloth at this point was a rank below Master, likely Wizard. Also remember that ESO and Morrowind take place 742 years away from each other, giving Neloth and Gothren more than enough time to not only enact their plan, but also have their relationship fall apart. As in the book Realizations of Acrobacy, it mentions how relations between the two had strained, with Gothren and Neloth engaged in an all-out war, sending their own troops against each other. This story also involves acrobats sneaking into Tel Naga and stealing Mehrunes' razor, the Daedric artifact of Mehrunes' Dagon, which at the time was possessed by Neloth. So the poor attitude Neloth demonstrates might have to do with losing the artifact, and maybe losing a few battles to Archmagister Gothren. Neloth also has many guards patrolling his tower of Tel Naga, and a surprising number of them are Bosmer, or Wood Elves. One might find this strange, but the Telvanni at this time were known for hiring Breton and Bosmer mercenaries to do their dirty work, as they refused to hire Redoran guards for political reasons, so it appears to be quite normal. Now let's speak about the various quests involving Master Neloth, as we will learn even more information about him. One of the only chores that Neloth will give us himself involves him wanting to acquire a robe called the Robe of Drake's Pride from Sinise Thindo, who is a servant of Archmagister Gothren. Neloth wants this robe, and believes Sinise is unworthy of wearing it as she is, quote, a mere child of 200 years. Unfortunately, Sinise is unwilling to part with it, so the only way to get the robe is to kill her. If we return the robe to Neloth, he will reward us with a generous 10 gold pieces, and will also restore our status if we get into trouble. So not only is Neloth so old that he considers living 200 years to be mere child's play, but this is our first piece of evidence that shows Neloth does not care for the lives of other people, since he believes the life of Sinise is worth the cost of an ale at the inn. Now, on top of getting people killed just for a little bit of comfort and finery, Neloth also engages in kidnapping for political gain, as he has kidnapped a woman named Nartise Arabar, who is the daughter of a prominent counselor from House Redoran named Minor Arabar. We will never know for certain why Neloth kidnapped Nartise, as he will never admit it, but Athen Serethi, another Redoran counselor, is the one who hypothesizes that it is to control Minor Arabar for political or economic gain. Fun fact, but Telvanni counselors like Neloth could not be bothered to attend political meetings or rule over the townsfolk, so they employ mouths to speak on their behalf. Master Neloth's mouth is a woman named Arara Uvulas, what a fucking mouthful, who represents his interests and does acquire various items for him. And there are 2 occasions when Arara will ask the player to retrieve an item for Neloth's use. The first is when Arara asks us to acquire 5 portions of Slode soap, which Arara will use to make an ointment to help with Neloth's joints, as apparently he has trouble moving sometimes since he is so old. The second is when Arara asks us to acquire a Staff of the Silver Dawn so that she can give it to Neloth, as he really likes staves, as we will touch on later. We will never see Arara after Morrowind, and so by the time of Skyrim, it is very likely that she is dead. That is really annoying. There is a very interesting quest within the Mages Guild given by the leader Archmage Trebonius Artorius, where he asks you to kill all of the counselors of House Telvanni, including Master Neloth himself. But considering we see Neloth in Skyrim, two things must have happened. Either the player refused to undergo such a quest and either forcefully or peacefully replaced Trebonius as Archmage, or Neloth survived the player's assassination and was able to flee after being defeated. Considering Morrowind's combat and how bodies are static after lying dead on the floor, this does seem like a potential possibility. Not only that, but there were originally two other quests that would have required Neloth to have been killed. One was going to be a Morag Tong writ that would have been placed on him requiring his assassination, and the other would have been given by Master Aryan to give Master Neloth a quote-unquote early retirement. And yet, Master Neloth is still standing, proving his resilience. Speaking of resilience, it should be stated that after the events of Morrowind, Master Neloth is likely the only counselor of House Telvanni still alive. Divaethfir is not a counselor and is only an honorary member of House Telvanni, so he doesn't count, but the others likely are dead. Archmagister Gothren dies no matter what. If you, the player, wish to become Archmagister of House Telvanni, you will have to kill him. But if you are just trying to be named Hortator by House Telvanni, his death is still required, as Gothren will refuse to name you, but Master Aryan will if he replaces him. Master Aryan is one of the more progressive Telvanni counselors who desires to reform House Telvanni and establish better ties with the other houses and even the Empire. Master Aryan even modeled his tower, Tel Vas, off of Imperial architecture. Even though Aryan is still a loyal Telvanni and believes the Empire is doomed to fail, others might think he is loyal to the Empire like House Hlalu was, and reject many of his reforms. And after the Oblivion Crisis and Red Year, where the Empire did nothing to help Morrowind, there may be those who seek to remove Master Aryan forcefully from his position due to growing hatred for the Empire. Similar to how House Hlalu was removed from being a great house due to their ties to the Empire. So, I believe that Master Aryan was killed by a rival Telvanni or a Morag Tong writ, or he instead fled, removing him from the equation either way. Mistress Dratha made a bargain with a Dremora named Zykanaz to give her immortality so that she could live long enough to see the Nerevarine prophecy completed. But the cost is that Zykanaz would return under the guise of a mortal man to claim her soul. Fun fact, this is why Dratha hates men in Morrowind. Since the Nerevarine prophecy ended, it makes sense that Zykanaz would come to collect Dratha's soul at some point between the events of Morrowind and the events of Skyrim. And last, Mistress Thorana has aged poorly and literally lost her mind and is no longer there mentally, either suffering from some sort of dementia or, my theory, manipulated by Sheogorath. Either way, many people express their desire to see her dead, and she even has a Morag Tong writ put on her, so the odds of her being alive by the year 200 of the 4th era is pretty goddamn low. Now, I'll come back to why Master Neloth being the sole survivor is significant, but suffice it to say, this shows that Master Neloth has indomitable resilience, and shows that he is powerful, capable, and a survivor.
Finally, someone who recognizes my importance around here.
So I think we have done a good job of showcasing Neloth and his lore in the year 427 of the 3rd era, but I think it's time to journey 200 years into the future and meet a newer yet older Master Neloth. We can meet Master Neloth next on the island of Solstheim in the Dragonborn DLC of Skyrim. Now, we don't know exactly when Neloth arrived on Solstheim. The Elder Scrolls wiki says it was sometime before the Red Year when Red Mountain erupted, but the source of this claim is dubious at best. Even then, I still like to believe that Neloth came to Solstheim before the Red Year because he predicted that shit was about to go down and wanted to avoid it at all cost. Taking a nice 2-century vacation before returning to Morrowind. Now, the first time we can encounter Neloth is just outside of Raven Rock by the Earthstone, where he is observing and investigating the various people who are possessed and building some sort of structure to someone called Miraak. What's interesting is that Neloth mentions he has various ways of making sure he is immune to many forms of control. So unlike everyone else on the island, excluding some of the Skull, Neloth is strong enough to reject the mind control of Miraak and his patron Hermaeus Mora, a Daedric prince. And when you ask about Miraak to anyone on the island, they will always be dazed and cryptic. Except for Neloth, who will coherently say that Miraak has been dead for thousands of years and will point you directly to a temple being built in the middle of Solstheim.
Miraak. It sounds familiar, and yet I can't quite place... Oh, wait, I recall. But that makes very little sense. Miraak's been dead for thousands of years. I'm not sure, but it is fascinating, isn't it? Perhaps it has some relation to what's going on here. Quite unexpected. I'm afraid I can't give you any answers, but there are ruins of an ancient temple of Miraak's toward the center of the island. If I were you, I'd look there.
This is one of 2 ways we can meet Neloth. The other way is by going straight to his tower of Tel Mithryn and introducing ourselves to him, where he is remarkably less rude and far more willing to talk. He has various greetings depending on whether we have heard of House Telvanni or not, and on our rank within the College of Winterhold. If we have yet to join the college, he will talk about his staff enchanter and say that he is likely the greatest wizard we will ever meet. If we are just a student at the college and say that he must be as powerful as the Archmage Savos Aran, Neloth will laugh and say that he is barely fit to be his apprentice, but may take him on for a price due to his knack for ward spells. But if we, the player, have recovered the Staff of Magnus and become the Archmage of the college, Neloth will be impressed with us. So impressed that he graciously offers us to be his apprentice in a few decades after his current apprentice Talvis completes his training. What a guy! Now, let's take a step back for a second and look at the holdings and deeds of Master Neloth during his 2 centuries of living on Solstheim. Unlike Tel Naga, Master Neloth personally grew his mushroom tower that he refers to as Tel Mithryn. Now, this is just a theory, but similar to how Divaith Fyr named his tower Tel Fyr, I like to believe that Neloth named his tower after himself, and that Mithryn is actually Neloth's last name. Master Neloth Mithryn. But of course that's just a theory, and we will probably never know what Neloth's last name truly is. Neloth has also grown 3 other fungal buildings next to his tower for his workers, which there are very few of compared to Morrowind, as only 4 other people live there. His apprentice Talvis Fathrian, who is a very powerful wizard in his own right, being a master trainer in conjuration, and is often used in Neloth's own experiments. I find it funny that even though Talvis is powerful and probably more than capable of making it big in the College of Winterhold or the Imperial Mage Guilds like the Synod, he is still nothing compared to the all-powerful Telvanni, like Master Neloth himself. There is also Neloth's mycologist Alina Mothrin, who makes potions and cares for Tel Mithryn by making sure the Mushroom Tower is healthy, though the tower looks quite unhealthy at the moment. Ulves Remorin is the cook that makes everyone's food and brews Neloth's fabled Canis Root tea. And there is Verona Nellis, who is the steward of Tel Mithryn and keeps everything more or less running, from delivering Neloth his tea to keeping supplies stocked. Annoyingly, Verona winds up dead.
Dead? Well, that's annoying.
killed by ash spawn while trying to get to Raven Rock for supplies. We will speak more on this later, but Verona will eventually be replaced by Drovis Relvi.
You mean leave Raven Rock for good? To go work for a crazed Telvanni wizard? Sure, just let me get me things. On second thought, never mind. I can get new stuff.
After Neloth grew his tower of Tel Mithryn, he also performed a great many deeds and a great many experiments as well. For example, after the Red Year, many Siltstriders, which are bug beasts that the Dunmer use for transportation, became endangered and almost extinct. Yet, Neloth was able to transport many to Solstheim, though we can only encounter one. Neloth also created a levitation pad, allowing those who are unable to cast levitation spells or do not have levitation potions to reach the top of Tel Mithryn. This is huge, since previously in Morrowind you needed levitation to access many Telvanni towers, though let's ignore ESO because it makes Neloth look not as cool, which is antithetical to this video. Neloth also began to study the molten rock and ash that erupted out of Red Mountain and landed on the shores of Solstheim. He found that some of these rocks contained a great deal of power and deduced that because Red Mountain housed the heart of Lorkhan, the heart of a god, some of its power seeped into the rocks that now decorates the shores of Solstheim. He named these rocks Heartstones and began to work on ways to utilize the rock's power to his own purposes. One of these purposes involved using the Heartstones to create a staff enchanter, which was revolutionary as enchanting staves is seen as a challenging endeavor, and Neloth has been able to streamline the process, making it easy for a fucking dumbass like the Dragonborn to make their own staff. After a few decades, Neloth hypothesized that if someone replaced their own heart with that of a Heartstone, they would be granted exceptional power, similar to that of the forsworn Briarhearts, and began researching how to safely and effectively perform such an endeavor. He first started by performing autopsies on Spriggans, which led him to the hypothesis in the first place, and was going to replace his own heart, but instead replaced his apprentice's heart instead. This apprentice wasn't Talvis, however, as it was another named Ildari Sarathril who volunteered for the surgery with promises of great power. But she annoyingly died during surgery, was buried, and immediately replaced by Talvis, as is expected in House Telvanni. Neloth was quite annoyed at Ildari's death and put his Heartstone experiments on hold to pursue other avenues of research until he could figure out other ways to utilize the Heartstones. Now, like all Telvanni master wizards, Neloth was interested in collecting Daedric artifacts, like Mehrunes Razor, which was obviously wrongfully taken from him, but he was also searching for the Ogma Infinium, an artifact of great power written by Xarxes, the elven god of secrets and hidden knowledge, but was claimed by Hermaeus Mora as his personal Daedric artifact. He never found the book, but he did find a similar artifact from Hermaeus Mora called a Black Book, which contains hidden and esoteric knowledge. Neloth used this Black Book he found to locate another Black Book in an ancient underwater Dwemer city called Nechardak. And after exploring the city, he was unable to retrieve the Black Book in Nechardak as it was a two-person job, and I assume nobody had the balls to help him out. Among all of these experiments and deeds that Neloth has performed over the 2 centuries on Solstheim, he has also done endless research on numerous other things that are far too complicated for your mortal non-Telvanni minds to understand.
Do you need all your toes? I could really use a fresh toe for... never mind. You aren't moldy enough.
But there is one thing that we can learn here. It is that Neloth is far from one who idles around, and he gets shit done. And when he hits a roadblock, he gets shit done in a different field of study. Now, as I have already mentioned, when we meet Neloth, he is very different and a changed Myr from the one in Morrowind. But why is that? Well, the technical answer is that Bethesda wanted to write someone in the DLC that was the personification of House Telvanni, and Neloth was the only one who fit the bill. Some like Aryan or Dratha are far too different, and Divaethfur is in a completely different class, so Neloth was perfect. But Bethesda changed certain aspects of him to be more likable and fulfill the Telvanni theme. But that's a fucking boring explanation, so what's the in-game lore reason? Well, even though Master Neloth is an extremely old wizard around a millennia old, 200 years is still a good chunk of time for him. 200 years for Neloth is like 6 years for us, and a lot of stuff can shape our worldview in 6 years. Neloth witnessed the rise and fall of not just Morrowind, but of House Telvanni too. He witnessed the Oblivion Crisis, the Red Year, and heard about the Argonian invasion, all of which may have changed him somewhat, even if he will never admit it. But I think the biggest moment that made him become a bit more quote-unquote polite was meeting the Nerevarine. Neloth in Morrowind does not give a shit about the Nerevarine and just wants them to get the hell out of his tower. But I think his meeting with Nerevar and seeing them defeat Dagoth changed his view on Outlanders. Obviously, Neloth is still a sociopath that only cares for himself and acquiring more power and knowledge, but he likely began to look at Outlanders with more value, even if that value is one that he would exploit.
You are too young to remember the Nerevarine. Defeated Dagoth and saved us all from the Blight.
And we know that Neloth has reverence for those that aren't Dunmer, as he has a fascination with a long-dead human shadow mage named Azra Nightwielder. Neloth considers Azra's advancements in magic to be legendary and says that he pioneered the field of staff enchanting, which is likely why he created the staff enchanter in the first place, to emulate someone he idolizes. Of course, this is all just a theory, but as an expert on Neloth, I feel that this could be a very plausible reason for Neloth's shift in personality.
Where is that lazy steward of mine? Verona? Oh no, wait, she's dead. Drovers!
Now, let's look at the quests involving Neloth within Skyrim, as there is quite a bit of information we can glean from him there. There isn't a lot to discuss when going to Nchaudak with Neloth. Both he and the Dragonborn work very well navigating the ruins together, and Neloth displays his immeasurable intellect and power. Though the experience of Nchaudak does give Neloth new ways on how to locate black books and record them without actually having to read them, similar to the Dwemer and the Elder Scrolls. Afterwards, Neloth will regard the threat of Miraak and Hermaeus Mora as more of a nuisance than a serious threat, and will be completely unsurprised when the Dragonborn defeats him, expecting nothing less, but is slightly glad that Miraak wasn't around to mess up his experiments. Afterwards, Neloth will start making a fuss about how everything in his tower is going wrong.
Ash spawn keep appearing. One night, a part of my tower mysteriously withered. Then my steward was killed. You had to find me a replacement. I've even been attacked by dragons. Do I need to go on? Maybe not. I hear they've been seen over Skyrim too. Even so, there is more than enough evidence that someone is out to get me.
These series of unfortunate events lead Neloth to believe that someone is out to get him, but not one of his legions of enemies from Morrowind, but someone based in Solstheim. After Neloth has the Dragonborn do some investigating, he will discover that Ildari is behind the attacks and that his Heartstone experiment was not a complete failure as Ildari survived, but it did drive her to the verge of insanity. Now, Neloth doesn't have time to go hiking across Solstheim to kill his old apprentice and will instead send the Dragonborn, but plans to send Talvis afterwards if the Dragonborn fails. After the Dragonborn is successful, Neloth will reward them with some gold, but also another reward worth so much more than gold.
Well, well, you have proven to be a more valuable ally than I anticipated. I have a staff for you, but I would also like to make you a member of my household, a member of House Telvanni. No need to thank me. I know you are overwhelmed with gratitude. For now, not much, but in a few decades, when I return to Vardenfell, you would be seen as Morrowind nobility. In the meantime, we would keep a bed and chest here for you.
An honorary membership into House Telvanni, and by Master Neloth's side, no less. But until Neloth returns to Morrowind, that just means the Dragonborn gets a free bed. Truly one of the greatest rewards we can receive in-game. I mean, it's a long-term investment, so you just have to wait. Now, Neloth will also have the Dragonborn perform 2 other experiments, but there is a specific one I will discuss as it pertains to his Heartstone experiments. After successfully, but also unsuccessfully performing the Heartstone surgery on Ildari, Neloth had been looking into what went wrong and started looking into the Forsworn of the Reach. As the Forsworn have powerful warriors in their ranks called Forsworn Briarhearts, who also have their hearts removed and replaced with Briarheart seeds. Neloth will put a memory spell on the Dragonborn so he can read their minds and have them investigate a Briarheart warrior. Afterwards, Neloth will figure out the correct way to knot a heart with the body and soul, giving him the missing key to the puzzle.
The connecting soul thread is knotted 3 times. Once for the heart, once for the spirit, and once for the body. The knot gives the connection a strength that may be the key that I've been looking for.
While Neloth is a borderline sociopath and cares little for the well-being of everyone around him, it should be stated that he still respects those that are capable and powerful. For example, Neloth seems to respect the Dragonborn on some level and believes they are more than capable of defeating Miraak. And if you tell Neloth that you are the Archmage of Winterhold, Neloth will acknowledge your deeds and power and offer you an apprenticeship in a few decades. And while there is no dialogue for this, I believe that if the Dragonborn walked into Tel Mithryn with Mehrunes Razor and the Ogma Infinium, Neloth would respect you for acquiring them and acknowledge your right to possess them. Because that is the core tenet of House Telvanni that Master Neloth embodies. Might makes right, and if you are unable or unwilling to rise above your station or accomplish certain deeds, then you are undeserving and weak. Now, what is Neloth's ultimate goal? What does he plan to do with his research and newly acquired power? Well, as stated previously, Neloth wishes to replace his own heart with that of a Heartstone to acquire more power and likely become immortal. As having his heart replaced with the residue of Lorcan, the missing god, is bound to give him some semblance of godlike divinity. It should also be stated that the Heartstones have a link to the Ash Spawn that roam Solstheim, as Ildari and Falx Carius, who had their hearts replaced, had the ability to raise and control the Ash Spawn. And the body of Falx Carius is still in perfect condition after 200 years, which is beyond impressive for a human. It is unknown how Falx Carius maintained his skin and didn't rot like a skeleton. This could have been the work of Ildari or the Heartstone, but the argument of the Heartstone making someone immortal is still evident. There is another quest where Neloth will learn how to summon the Ash Spawn through conjuration magic. And that, combined with the power of the Heartstone, may allow him to raise his own army out from the ground that will follow his every command.
Imagine what I could do with that power.
After wrapping up all of his experiments that require him to be on Solstheim, Neloth plans to return to Morrowind and become the new Archmagister of House Telvanni, ushering in a new age for the Telvanni. Well, not really. It's probably going to be business as usual since Telvanni Lords don't do a lot of ruling, they delegate that to their mouths, but still. And with divine-like powers, an Ash army at his beck and call, and most of the Telvanni leadership likely being killed with only upstarts replacing them, Neloth could easily return and dominate all competition and truly become the most powerful Telvanni wizard, even outclassing Divaith himself, in my opinion. And so ends the story of Master Neloth, for now. An extremely old and powerful Telvanni wizard that has endured and outlasted everything that Nirn could throw at him. So ancient he is that his morality went the way of the Dwemer and now only cares for acquiring power and drinking Canis root tea. and has no qualms about stepping over people to get what he wants. But even then, his apathy makes him quite humorous and gives him such a lovable personality that makes you respect him, even if you act like you hate him. He is also the true embodiment of House Telvanni, and the embodiment of what it's like to be a main character that has 100% completed their own game, fully devoting themselves to side quests. And I swear to Azura, if I do not see Master Neloth in ESO or The Elder Scrolls 6, I am going to personally zero-sum the entire universe. Do not fucking test me, Bethesda and or ZeniMax. If and when ESO goes to port Telvannis, I better see Neloth there so I can sing his praises from Oblivion to Sovngarde. Maybe I'll make a video on the ideal way to implement Neloth into such a DLC. As you can tell from this video and my goddamn channel name, I love Master Neloth. And he is definitely my favorite character in the entire Elder Scrolls series. He has the perfect blend of intriguing writing, lore, being capable, humor, and power. The fact that I haven't made a video purely dedicated to him in the past 3 years is a crime, one that has finally been rectified.
Finally, I can get back to work.
And that is all I wrote. I hope you enjoyed. I wanted this video to encompass nearly everything about Neloth, from small lore to big lore to even some theories I have. And I hope this video wasn't too confusing. It was a little difficult to structure it because there was just so much to talk about. Now, as much as I love Neloth, you know who I love half as much? My channel members, and they are Mirak, Sovdark, Connorunda, Will Ernst, Ranger McKay, Deadpool Maoista, The Proud Prince, Skooma Addict, JJ Ensid, Milani Stilla, Grud, Batman Man, Luxie, Carson Friday, Dova 2023, Partheon, Abdullah the Goat, NCC2614, and Kirill Gaming. And if you would like to see my videos earlier by either 24 hours or even 3 days, then consider becoming a member. All members get early access, and Oathman and Mouths will get shoutouts at the beginning or end of almost every video. So with all that being said, make sure to like the like button, like the subscribe button, and like the bell notification down below to be updated on future videos. And I will see you whenever the fuck I decide to upload again. House Telvanni be with you.
Now, where did I put... Oh, yeah.